there's one thing about the studio, as far as we were concerned, and Mum had it from 1968 till 2005, roundabout, it was always Jessie's studio. And I know my mother always sort of thought it was always Jessie's studio. I think other people that sort of knew her thought it was Helen Hudson's studio, but we always thought it was Jessie's studio for all that time. So that was just what it was, yeah.
Jessie's studio. If you look closely enough, you can see its dark silhouette between the trees as you walk down Baker Road. I can't say I've ever been inside. Being privately owned, I decided it probably wasn't the best idea to trespass on another person's property, and while my attempt to contact the current owners came to no avail this time around, I was actually able to meet someone who had not only been in Jessie's studio and who holds strong family ties to it, but who indeed inherited a treasure trove of many original Jessie Traill works left behind in the studio after she passed. Jeff Hudson. Jeff's father purchased the studio for his wife Helen Hudson, Jeff's mother, as a surprise after Jessie passed in 1967. Reading from Joe Oliver's biography, we can see Jeff's mother is indeed mentioned. In Joe's words, "Before travelling to Victoria in the winter of that year, I began to research the history of Jessie's connection with the village of Harkaway in the foothills of the Dandenong Ranges east of Melbourne. Paul Pathan had written an article about the history of the studio, in which he stated that Jessie had left the studio to her friend Charles Rankin, and he had later sold it to a member of the Victorian Artists Society. Helen Hudson then owned the studio until her death in 2005. Like many people I met through this journey, I came across Jeff through the generous recommendation of another person who helped incredibly in my investigations. Special shout out here to Neil Lucas. Neil is the local historian at Berwick Anglican Church, where Jessie Traill was a devoted attendee for many years. Jessie left a gift in her will to the church, which they used to purchase a bell tower to go in their parish gardens, and there are records of Jessie's attendance in the church's meeting minutes. Neil was incredibly generous. He was able to give me books and photos and shared beautiful stories about the church's history. But beyond this, Neil put me in touch with his friend Jeff, who proved to shed more light on Jessie than I could have ever imagined. After a quick conversation over the phone, Jeff promised to send me through a few pictures of Jessie's works that he had in his possession. What I expected was one or two pictures of small discarded sketches. What I received, though, was an album of over 30 photos, not only of incredible works by Jessie Traill, but also photos of her and pictures showing the interior of the studio, and even works of his mother's that showed the likeness of the studio exterior. Well, that got me hooked, and I could not wait to find out more. And I think Jeff knew I was pretty impressed. Well, thank you so much for making time to come and have a chat.
That's all right.
Honestly,
So you liked some of those pictures, did you?
do I like some of those photos? Jeff, you're blowing my mind. I'm looking through all of them, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like, I hope you realize how much of a treasure trove you're sitting on.
Oh, look, it was, yeah, incredible. Yeah, but the amazing thing is that a lot of the paintings that we've got were just left behind by some of the art galleries and things that came up to have a look and take what they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's just like the stuff that was...
Maybe they didn't see them, I don't know.
The photos that you were able to send through,
yeah,
I'm looking at them and I'm just like, this was her studio. Like, but I mean, take me back. Tell me about how your life back in the day intersected with Jessie, or really your mother's and father's, I should say.
Well, it was theirs. I mean, I don't know. We knew. I can remember visiting Enid Josky, who had Halfra. We used to go in and visit her. And then, as I said to you, I thought that Enid had owned Halfra, and then Jessie got the studio from Enid, but it was the other way around. And you can see that on the back of one of those plates, one of those paintings somewhere. I think there's a note about it. But
Mm.
so Jessie owned the whole property, and then Enid Josky bought the house from her, and Jessie moved into the studio,
And made
which
it
was
a.
had a 1 bedroom in it and a sort of a half a kitchen, and that was about it.
And you remember
And
going up there as a kid?
I remember going up not to the studio, but to Halfra before it was rebuilt when it was an old house, and I think the old house, a lot of the old house is still in the kitchen of the new house. It's sort of the new house was built around it.
That's what I've
Um,
heard. They've kind of
yeah,
modernized it a bit, but it's still got
yeah,
the bones.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So and my brother can remember going, and he said he remembers it better than me. He said you could sort of you weren't allowed to go into Jessie's part of the property. There's a gate between the two, but
Yeah.
you weren't allowed to go in there. And Jessie at that stage was, well, she would have been getting on, although nowadays I'm not so sure that she was that old.
I mean,
Because you will
yeah,
find as you go that age becomes relevant.
exactly. Isn't it just a number? Like it's all about
Yeah,
how you feel
yeah.
upstairs. Yeah.
Suddenly, all these people that were old, like your parents are always old, they suddenly think, oh,
Yes.
they weren't that old after all.
I'm
So
sure I'll look
anyway,
back at
he
that.
can
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, I think Jessie was sort of she according to Harry, she always looked a little bit sort of not well dressed and a bit rough and a bit scruffy and all that sort of stuff. But she was what she was, I guess, and she didn't have to
Yeah.
worry about anybody anyway. So
Well, that's the thing. I think she was just undeniably just like she was herself. She wasn't going to
yeah,
try and be anything for anyone else.
no.
She had her studio, she did her art,
And she can
and
do a painting and do whatever she wanted. But when you look at the photo of her in uniform, she was a pretty good looking young
oh,
woman.
absolutely. This
Yeah,
photo of her in her like
yeah,
yeah, she
yeah.
really, I think it shows kind of like she was just there and she was there to live her life and she wasn't going
Yeah,
to live her life to kind of be anyone's cup of tea except her own.
right. Just her own. That's right. That's right.
Ah,
But
yeah,
you've got the
see,
photograph of her in
mm,
uniform, and she
yes,
looked
it's
really good.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
No,
so
she was good.
yeah, and so did you ever like come across her, kind of see her in the like over the fence and think, oh gosh, that's Jessie Traill? Like,
Possibly, but I can't quite remember. I think my brother would have done, and he'd remember better than me. He's much older. He's a couple of years older.
ah, you're the fun younger sibling, right?
Yeah,
Nice.
18 months or something. So he remembers her better than I do.
That's
Yeah.
okay. And
But
so
I
it
do remember
was,
going up to Enid Josky. I think my mother used to make us go up and visit Enid Josky because that was a good thing to do. Oh, God, I don't want to go and do
gosh,
and other old people.
right, you're right.
Yeah.
And now you sit back and you think, actually, that was probably a little bit of history, right?
What a pity I didn't know a bit more about it all. Yeah.
That's okay. You get to learn
Yeah.
about it in hindsight. And
Yeah,
so,
that's right. That's
what
right.
was the kind of process of then your mum getting the hands on the
Getting the studio.
studio?
Well, I did tell you, didn't I? But Dad had taken us skiing, and it must have been in 1968, although I can't remember what year it was. He'd taken us all up to Bulla, to Bulla, to go
Yeah,
skiing, and he'd left us all up there with Mum, and then he went back to Berwick to go back to work, and then he came and picked us up at the end of it, and we were driving home, and Mum had said to him apparently that she'd like to buy the studio, and he said, "Oh God, no, I don't want to do that." Anyway, we're driving home. We're coming past a turn off, and she said, "Can't we just go up there and see if they'd like to sell it?" And he said, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he kept on driving. And then a few miles further on, he said, she was getting a bit annoyed, I think. And he said, "As a matter of fact, I bought it." So he bought it while we were up the Bulla. So
that
she was
is
there ever since.
brilliant.
Yeah, from 68 to 2005, almost every day, I think every day she could, she'd be up there.
Well, Helen certainly put Jessie's studio to good use. I'm sure Jessie would have been incredibly pleased to hear about the many days Helen spent in her studio, holding the same passion as Jessie did to create artworks. And indeed, it was at this point that I couldn't help but mention the work sitting conspicuously behind Jeff. Carefully arranged along the shelf behind him, Jeff had an array of framed etchings and paintings. Some big, some small, some black and white, some coloured, and of course I just had to ask him about them. We started to go through them one by one, and indeed some were his mother's, and some I was excited to learn were original artworks by Jessie Traill.
But the one I like, I think, is the one of the cathedral.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that a Jessie Traill?
That's the Jessie one. Yeah, that's the Bruges Cathedral. And I think I like it because it's a very simple one. It's got soft colours, and it's just, the more you look at it, the more you see in it.
Do you want to, are you able to pick it up and we can have a look at it?
Yeah, I can bring it over. Where is it? I'll get back a bit there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can see the gate. Oh my gosh.
Reflection.
Oh, that's okay. I think you sent me a photo through.
I sent you a photo of it, yeah. But there's so much, the more you look at it, the more you see in it.
What do you particularly see when you first look at it?
Oh, I don't know. I think that you start picking up the people that are in there, and then you start to see a bit of detail on the walls and the columns and things. And the more you look, the more there is. It's I just find it a fascinating one.
Yeah.
And it was for sale for 4 guineas.
Any idea of how much that would be now?
No, I'd have to work that out, but that was £4, 4 shillings, but I don't know how much it is now.
£4, 4 shillings. I'm going to write that down.
£4, 4 shillings, yeah.
£4. I'm going to do the maths on that.
4 guineas, you'll find it. You can look them up and find it.
That's brilliant. And so
yeah.
I just love as well looking at it from far away. Like, I think the reason maybe we're so intrigued by it is like because of the way that it's composed, you feel like you're about to walk into it.
You do. Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I wonder, well, do you know whereabouts it was, like where the location is in the artwork?
No, I don't. I've never looked it up. It's a job for you. You're the researcher.
Exactly. I have to play art historian here. So do we know if it was in Australia or do we think it's overseas?
It'd be France. It'd be France.
France. Wow.
France, yeah.
But this wasn't the only piece of Jessie's that Jeff had in his collection. Jeff indeed inherited a literal stack of original Jessie Traill pieces. Jeff told me that after his mother passed in 2005, the family met together in the studio to discuss how its contents, including the artworks left behind, would be distributed. And while the division of Jeff's mother's pieces was a bit more straightforward, dividing Jessie's pieces required a much more, shall we say, objective approach. Yeah, I can imagine. And so that was both works of your mother's and the works that were left behind
what
in
was
the
left
studio.
of Jessie's, yeah. Well, the Jessie stuff was slightly different, done slightly differently because I think my father wanted us to choose what we wanted and take and leave whatever we didn't want. And of course, none of us could really say, well, I want that and I want this one. And we're all being too polite and nice to each other. So in the end, he got fed up again and he got a valuer in and he put them in 4 separate piles, each of about equal value, and said, right, choose your pile. So we did.
That's brilliant. What a brilliant way to like just make everyone happy.
Yeah, everybody was happy and there was no arguments. And
see, that's the thing. Sometimes
and I got the decision made.
Well, and also you were probably spoilt for choice. Like you're sitting there and you're looking at all this art and you think, I want it all. Like
well, that's right. I mean, my sister took the pile that had the woman in the buggy. She had that one, and I love that one. But anyway, she wanted that, so that was fine. And my brother took the big ones, and he took the one with the magpies.
That one with the magpies is
great. That is so good.
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I adore that one. Do you know whenabouts that's dated?
What?
The date of the magpie one.
The date of the magpies? No, I don't. I see. It might be. I don't think it will be. I don't think it'll be on the back. I don't think it'll be there. No, it was really good.
No, it was.
So I wouldn't have minded that one too, but in the end, I took the one of the bush, which I quite like. But I really would have liked the pile that had all those 3 in it, and I could have grabbed it.
So the one of the bush. Do you have the one of the bush, or are you talking about the one of the?
I can go and get it for you. It's a big one.
Would you? Oh, Jeff, you're too kind.
I don't know how you're going to go seeing it.
Oh, Jeff, it's massive.
Yeah. Can you see it or not?
Yes, I can see it. Oh.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this piece.
I don't know much about it, except that it's on brown paper and it's stuck on masonite, and it's only stuck now across the top. So I'm sort of hoping that eventually it'll just sort of come unstuck completely and I can get it redone.
It's
I don't want to pull it off, because if I try and pull it, I'll probably tear it.
Don't you dare.
I can't. But I don't want to stick it back, because I'd rather have it mounted properly.
Yeah. So is it an etching?
No, it's a painting. It must be watercolour.
Yeah, I can see. So was that done in her studio?
I would imagine so, but I don't know. Yeah, I'd imagine it would have been, because that's where it was. So I think it probably was. I think it'd be a bit much to be lugging around from Paris or something.
I can imagine. No, I just love that I'm looking at it and I can imagine all the birds in it. And yeah. Whereabouts do you have it seated in your house? Where do you display it?
We have got quite a lot of paintings here, and my wife has got a lot of Aboriginal art as well. She works for an Aboriginal artist sometimes. And we've got a lot of stuff on the walls, and that one at the moment is stuck on the floor in the spare bedroom.
Oh, no.
There's no room to hang it.
Oh, I mean,
room for it.
Yeah, I reckon it works perfectly just there, like right where you're sitting.
Oh my God, Father. Yeah, well, it actually does. It hides all the multitude of sins behind it.
Oh yeah, where are the best and worst bits?
Of the painting or of the stuff behind it?
The painting.
The painting. There's a tear in that bottom, what you're facing, bottom right-hand corner, which I just taped back together the other day when I got it out to photograph it. So that bit's damaged, and there's a little bit of damage there along the bottom, but apart from that, it's all in pretty good order, except it's just not mounted very well.
No, that's okay. I mean, mounting is one of those things that can fix a whole lot. And from the look of the colors as well, the age has given it such a character.
Yeah. No, I like it, even though I didn't get the one of the magpies or the one of the girl in the
I wouldn't be too. Yeah. No, I think I reckon, Jeff, you got to stand strong on this. I think you've won out a bit. I think you got yourself.
That's what I tell myself. I don't believe myself yet, but I tell myself that.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. I think it reminds me.
It would be good properly mounted.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think properly mounted, I can imagine it just up on a wall and thinking of walking into it. I can imagine Jessie It'd
be pretty spectacular. Yeah. That'd be pretty good.
Do you know how much a gallery would be excited to get their hands on that one, Jeff?
I'm sure they would. Yeah, I'm sure they'd be quite excited to get their hands on a few of the things that we've got.
Hold strong, Jeff. Don't let them get you just yet.
Well, I had hoped to get a photograph of one that I gave to one of my daughters, which was the part of the mechanics of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which I always thought, I used to hang up in the dining room at my parents' place, and I always thought it was a part of my cousin's property, my uncle's property at the time, the Beechall up at southwest Queensland, and 60-acre sheep property. 60,000 acre sheep property, and they had the big shearing shed there. And I always thought all these works, mechanical stuff, was to do with the shearing shed. And it's been hanging in the dining room as long as I can remember. And when we took it down after my mother died, I discovered on the back it was the Jessie Traill of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So it was part of the mechanics of the bridge. And I thought, oh my God, Father, I thought that was part of the shearing shed. Yeah.
That's one of her most famous series, Jeff.
Yeah, I know.
That's the ones that National Gallery of Australia have in their collection.
Is it? I'm not surprised. Yeah.
And you have one.
We've got one. Yeah.
So, I mean, have you ever gone and seen Jessie's artwork exhibited?
No, I haven't, but one of my cousins actually told me there was an exhibition a few years ago down at, the gallery down on the peninsula, down towards Frankston. And I was going to go down, but I couldn't get down there in time before it closed, so I didn't see it. But yeah, I would have loved to have gone down. We didn't make it.
Yeah, and have you heard from the Traill since? I
No,
guess is
I
my
haven't.
final
As a
thing.
matter of fact, I was sort of wondering. I was thinking I really should find out how to get in touch with that family because of those medals that I've got. And I think they really should probably go back to the family if I can find them.
Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be one of the final things I wanted to ask you about. Those medals.
Mm.
Talk to me. Are they Jessie's?
The Jessie's, yeah. One of them's inscribed with her name on the back of it. And I don't know, where did I put them? Can't think where I put them. But the photos are there anyway. And I sent you the photos of the back as well, so you could have a look at them. But yeah, one of them, I think that the Joan of Arc one, I don't know what that is, whether that's just something she picked up or not. But then there's, I think, the Red Cross one, I think, she got inscribed on the back with her name. So but they're all hers, yeah. They're just there.
So they were left in
So
the
much stuff is
studio.
just there. Mm-hmm.
They were left in the studio?
I left in the studio, yeah. So they may have been just sort of somewhere in a drawer or something, and nobody knew they were there until we started to really clean out. Although my mother would have known about them. She would have known they were there.
That's precious. That's so wonderful that you have those, and hold on to them because...
Well, they are, and I will, but I just sort of feel they should go back to the family somehow, because what happens later, I don't know. They just, a lot of this stuff will sort of say, well, I don't know anything about it, and it doesn't mean anything to me, and so for that, yeah.
No, absolutely. I was touched to hear about how Jeff had held on to these medals. I could tell it was something that meant a lot to him. But in our conversation, I was incredibly excited to realize the research that I'd been doing might actually be able to help these medals find their way home. After our discussion, I shared with Jeff that through Joe Oliver, I'd been able to get in touch with a family member of Jessie's. Indeed, while Jessie did not have children of her own, she has many aunts and uncles and cousins who still hold the Traill name. I was able to put Jeff in contact with this family member. And now, over half a century after Jessie has passed, her medals and their legacy are in the process of being returned to her family. Jeff, thank you so much for taking care of these medals for all this time, and for the stories you so generously shared, and for giving the left behind works of Jessie Traills a new home. This podcast has been narrated and produced by Grace Watson, assistant producer Josiah Kopp. The theme music is Ottorino Respighi's Pines of Rome, and special thanks to, of course, our guest, Jeff Hudson.